Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Tomorrow's Ummah podcast, where youth from the West discuss Islamic concepts and history. Today, I am joined with Dr. Abdullah Al-Qadri and my dear brother Talha Mustafi. Assalamu alaikum, brothers.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Today, we have a very interesting topic where we're going to be discussing the four pathways within one faith, the four madhahib of Islam, a very deep topic where we want to discuss the general principle, what defines it, the history behind it, where we lie today with it, and the four great imams that are the founders of these different madhahib as well. So I think just to get a little ease into this topic, let's talk about what is a madhab, right? And the historical context of a madhab. It dates back to obviously the time of after Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. What were the concepts that led into the creation of a madhab? How much were they correlated to the founder, which it was named after? And obviously we can talk about the names of these madhabs as well. But let's ease into it. Let's define what a madhab is.
I mean, loosely, if you want to kind of, for the layman, just to describe a mazhab is a school of thought.
Yeah.
And roughly speaking, by the hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there are four dominant schools of thought. And they've existed for the last 1200 years or so.
Within the Sunni school, yeah.
Sunni school of thought, correct. Obviously Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali. And they're all connected.
Yeah.
And inshallah, we'll get to the connections in a bit as well. Both in terms of the founders of the schools and then the students of the schools as well. And what's really interesting to note is there have been many other schools as well. There have been many other individuals who have, maybe differed on small topics from the four.
Yeah.
But by the hikmah of Allah, by the qadr of Allah, these four continue to remain the most dominant schools of thought.
Till this day.
And what's really interesting to me in terms of Islam is that, so if you look into Catholicism or Christianity, what tends to happen there is they've got a ministry.
Yeah.
They've got a pope, they've got archbishops, and they convene.
There's no such thing as Islam.
Right. No, and it just happened.
Yeah.
Even, a couple hundred years ago, what used to happen in Masjid al-Haram, the Kaaba.
Yeah.
4 different times of Asr.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right?
4 different imams.
2 different times of Zuhr and Fajr.
Yeah.
But they all did it. Why? 4 different imams.
4 different imams.
Right? Because the Hanafis would be here, Shafi'is would be here, Malikis would be here, Hanbalis. And for the vast, for centuries, the Hanafis were always the biggest school.
Yeah.
Then came the Shafi'is. Malikis were quite small, and then Hanbalis were really small,
Very
but
small,
they existed. And there was always almost a sense of cooperation, cohesiveness amongst the 4. I think that in and of itself is a miracle of Islam.
Exactly.
Definitely. SubhanAllah.
Indeed.
And we're talking about what are we interpreting here? Because we talk about a school of thought, which I think everyone agrees it's still very much a loose English translation of what it actually means.
Yep.
The broader explanation of madhab is a way, right?
Yep.
How you are living as a Muslim, and people define it mainly when it comes to your fiqh. Now, what is your fiqh? Fiqh is your understanding of Islam, your deeper understanding, your day-to-day actions of it. For example, how you pray, salah, for example, how you give zakah, how you fast, these different aspects. And there are different interpretations and ways of interpreting the different, actions within them, whether you pray differently, but unanimously within these different madahib, there is a universal truth as well. They all have universal truths, foundational truths, right? They do not ever stray away from the foundational truths of Islam, right? There's only one God.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that the foundational truths are the Qur'an and the Sunnah.
That's it. The
They're all
sources of
based on
law.
them.
The sources of law, which is the Qur'an and Sunnah. And this is where I like to start the definition of madhahib, is that there's a difference between a source of law and how you interpret the law.
Exactly.
Right? So your source of law is the Qur'an and the Sunnah, prophetic tradition for people when you're talking about the Sunnah. So prophetic tradition, how you interpret it in different cases. Even during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there was times where companions would travel and they'd be away from Rasulullah ﷺ. So they wouldn't be able to ask Rasulullah ﷺ, what is the case in the scenario? Should I do this or should I do that?
Yeah.
right? There would be a difference of opinion between companions. And in that case, they would do something that follows the process of ijtihad, or they would do something that follows usul fiqh, which is these different sort of tools in a toolbox that the companions would use to make a very good decision based on the evidence that they have.
Do you know an example of the time of the Prophet?
There actually are a couple of examples that I can take from. There was a time where the companions were traveling far away, and I wrote this one down because I wanted to make sure I had the hadith itself. Abu Sayyid Al-Qadri radiallahu anhu reported 2 men went out for travel.
Sunan Dawood then.
Sunan Abu Dawud. Yep. And when the time of prayer arrived, they did not have water with them.
Correct. Yep.
And they performed dry ablution with clean earth and prayed.
Which is tayammum.
Yep, tayammum for those, the translation of it, dry ablution, tayammum. Yep. But later on, they found water in this case. So they performed the dry ablution, but later on they found water. One of them, out of the 2 companions, repeated his ablution with the water and prayed, while the other did not repeat.
Wait. Have you heard this narration before?
Yeah, I've gone through it. Yeah.
Oh, okay, never mind. Because I was going to ask him
what would happen in that
you
case.
want to do? Okay, fair enough.
What would you do?
Yeah.
But generally speaking, what would you do? Because I haven't gotten to the end of it, right? In this case, would you be the one to
go for like tayammum or water? Yeah, that's the scenario where you find differences of Quranic, or you can say like prophetic knowledge.
Yeah.
And even in the time of Tabi'een and the times after, people had issues comprehending the Quranic and prophetic knowledge they got.
Okay, so in this scenario, would you've already prayed, you've done your tayammum, you've prayed, but now you found water. Would you do ablution again and pray again?
I would say like my niyyah, my intention at the time of doing tayammum was obviously tahara. So by that definition,
so your prayer is done.
I would
so you wouldn't
definitely
even pray
go.
again. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
I wouldn't even go that deep. For me, I don't want to act like I'm not a worshiper or anything, but putting myself in that shoe, I've already prayed.
You prayed.
Yeah.
Why
You
am I
prayed,
going
you
to
prayed.
pray again?
Because in the scenario you didn't have it, right? So that this is where now they come to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they've come back from their travels, they come to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they mention the whole scenario to them. And this is a very good example of interpreting, right? Because the companions did what they could do best with whatever knowledge they had. And they told Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the situation. He said, and to the man who did not repeat his prayer, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you have followed the sunnah correctly and you will be rewarded for your prayer.
Yeah.
And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to the one who repeated his prayer, you will have a double reward. That is such a beautiful situation, right? Because now we've seen both scenarios. Both of them weren't shunned for their actions, right? One of them performed an action to the best of his knowledge. I found water shortly after. Let me, with this fresh water, just complete it. So it was like a nafli prayer, right? In that case, because it was a reward given to him. May Allah accept our prayers in whatever case they may be. So that's a really, I think, a very common example given to anyone. I think there are a couple more examples.
I love that example.
Yeah.
Here's my personal favorite. On ikhtilaf. This is in Bukhari.
Mm-hmm.
We've all heard of Battle of Khandaq.
Yep.
A very famous battle of the trench. Fun fact, by the way, I was in Medina recently, and they've actually covered up the trench.
Yeah, I've seen.
Do you know what?
They've covered up all the tents and the trenches as well.
Yeah, why?
No clue.
So I asked a local, and his kind of interpretation, or whatever you want to think about it.
Sorry, they're made out of like volcanic rock, right?
Yeah, it's diggable. Like it's dirt.
Diggable, yeah. Okay.
I mean, the dirt that you see on the road is exactly the same dirt that was dug
there.
up.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the reason that, it's kind of confined and they've covered it up because the trench began to disappear because of the number of people who took the barruk from the trench.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's why they actually stopped it.
For blessings.
And whatnot. Anyways, so Battle of Khandaq, they're coming back. Alhamdulillah, the Muslims are victorious. If you know what we should do? We should do a series on the battles that Rasulullah was involved in.
Yeah.
That's a very good topic as well. And all of them will have different podcasts. But anyways, coming back from Khandaq, mashallah, the Muslims are victorious. Mm-hmm. And the trench is dug, for those of you that don't know, a little bit at a distance, obviously, from main inland Medina.
Yeah.
Rasulullah says, I'm going to take the ones with the horses and the camels and the quicker companions that don't have a lot of baggage and luggage, and we're going to go to Banu Quraza, just as after Zuhr, Salat al-Zuhr. do not read Asr. Now, these are his instructions.
Yeah.
Do not read Asr until you get to Banu Quraza.
Yep.
Everyone understood? Bukhari, by the way. And he left. The camels are gone. The horses are gone. Now it's the elderly companions, perhaps the wounded, perhaps those with a lot of mining equipment.
Going
They
slower.
can't keep up,
Yep.
slower. The sun is beginning to wane now.
Mm-hmm.
And so a few companions began to get restless.
Like my
Asr
prayer's
is-
gonna miss.
Yeah, we're gonna miss her prayer. We're gonna miss her prayer. So a companion stands up. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Mhm.
Begins the
Mashallah.
azan. Another companion stands up. What are you doing?
What are you doing? Yeah.
The Prophet said, don't read Asr until you get to Banu Quraza.
Mhm.
We are not at Banu Quraza. Why are you reading Asr? The same companion who was, beginning, who was a little zealous, he said, listen, don't look at the literal meaning of what Rasulullah said. He simply meant it metaphorically to quicken your pace.
To get there as fast
So
as
we don't
possible.
become lazy. We don't dilly-daddle. Again, this is today's terminology, not the words of the hadith,
Yeah.
obviously. And so and it became such a heated moment that the two groups of companions became almost argumentative that this is no, we will follow the words of Rasulullah to a T. The other group said, no, we're going to follow Allah because we can't miss Salah.
Yeah.
Anyways, cooler heads prevailed. They all get to Medina. They take their muqaddamah to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Before I answer, what would you have done?
Oh, for my position, I would have definitely gone with the Arsa time. I mean, you have like the sun is going down and you see your prayers kind of miss. So of course you would prefer.
Now imagine the Prophet's here.
Yeah.
Okay, just imagine.
Yeah.
He said, don't read Asr
Asr
until you get to Banu Quraza.
That's the
So
situation.
now are you worried about the sun? Or are you
Or
worried
the
about what the Prophet said?
Yeah, that's a straight
so-
hukum. Yeah.
It's
So-
actually
so-
interesting. This is the first example my teacher taught me when we learned.
So what would you have done? Pretend you
I
don't
would have
know
waited 110%.
You would have listened
You
to
would
the
have listened.
literal meaning of the
Literal.
Prophet's word.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you would have
Like I would have gone for like
prayed.
Asr prayer. Yeah.
Yeah, you would have prayed. Okay, so good.
And this
Difference
was
of
my
opinion.
opinion when I
Differences.
first heard it from my teacher, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They get there. Rasulullah hears this, smiles. You're both right.
Both right. Yeah.
That's how simple Islam is.
Yeah.
And look at
Subhanallah.
what Islam has been made into.
Yeah.
We worry more about the placement of the feet rather than what is in our hearts while we pray.
Yep. No, that's true.
insane.
Keyboard,
I think that was a good
keyboard warriors are winning now.
Yeah. Oh my God. You should see the comments on some of our podcasts. So
Yeah.
anyway,
I
I
mean-
think that's a good disclaimer, a little precursor before we get into mazahib. That difference of opinion must occur. They have to
Yeah.
occur. That's human psychology.
And it's
right?
inevitable in both cases. Like difference of opinion in the case of not having the information even during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. But now we're talking about community that is growing.
Yeah.
Right? Islam, the fastest growing religion. It spread so far into communities that were not Arabic speaking communities, right? So we have to think even broader. And the Quran is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there is indeed so much wisdom in why the Quran was revealed in the language it was revealed in
Yeah.
and how it was revealed in.
Yeah.
Now, the Quran, this is something that people are a bit iffy in, and I think they forget is the fundamental understanding. The Quran was revealed, but there is interpretation of what is revealed, right? So there's the literalist view that this is how it's said and this is what the situation is, right? But then there's situations where you do qiyas, right? You do
Qiyas is analogy.
analogical reasoning. So a good example of this is
More than that, I would categorize qiyas as deductive analogy.
deductive analogy.
It's an easier translation.
Yeah. And I think the example I'm going to give will hand in hand go for both, right? Drinking alcohol, right? It is
Okay.
point blank period. It is haram for you to do. And it is there, right? Now,
Sorry, I'm smiling because
I know you're thinking about
Yeah.
something. This is why I
Yeah.
want to get my point
Yeah,
through before
yeah,
you
yeah.
say what you're going to say.
yeah.
But the deductive reasoning now here is for a lot of scholars is it's an intoxicating substance, right? So is all these different drugs, A, B, C, D, narcotics, etc. So because of this, you are not allowed to do these intoxicating and harming drugs to yourself, right? So that is qiyas in this situation. They did not have that type of narcotic at that time, so you wouldn't be able to make that decision off of it. But because the Quran is telling you a matter of principle that you should not do this for your health, you should not do this because it's not good, you are inhibiting your function. All these things aside, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't drink, you don't drink.
Period.
Period, right? But in this case, you're not drinking something that's intoxicating. So now the scholars make the opinion that we follow is that intoxicating substances are not allowed, right?
Yep.
And that's a really good example of what qiyas is, because you've now deduced based upon the principle of something being intoxicating
Yeah, the khamr.
that
Yep.
you are not allowed to drink it,
Yep.
or not allowed to consume it. Now, I know there is opinions that you probably were going to mention that if it's not intoxicating.
No, I don't even want to mention those opinions because there's something that I heard a couple days ago which kind of blew my mind. It's a very simple. I don't know if maybe it'll have the same effect on you as perhaps it had on me. But I was speaking to Mufti Sohail, by the way, and I asked him a question. It was very matter of fact, like it was nonchalant for me. What's your opinion on ABCD question? Looked at me, he's like, opinion? I'm not one who is able to form any sort of an opinion in Islam. I don't have the ilm. An opinion would be, I've heard everything. This is now what I think, and I'm a mujtahid. So here it is.
And so that's subhanAllah, this is very beautiful. Just for context here, a mujtahid is someone who does ijtihad on situations where you take in everything in the toolbox in usul fiqh, and then you come to a sound conclusion, right?
Yeah.
Based on a scenario. Now we're talking in our circles. Mufti Sohail is a very learned man. He's spent, I think, in his whole life, learnt about fiqh to very high
Let's just
degree.
say he's spent more years learning about deen than probably I have been alive.
Way more.
Wow.
Way more.
Inshallah.
And subhanAllah, that tells you everything you need to know. That the degree of respect and degree of honor you should have for something or someone who is a mujtahid and someone who has the authority to do ijtihad. Ijtihad being in this case,
what is ijtihad?
Making a judicial decision with reasoning within Islam, using various tools that we'll probably get to when we start talking about usul fiqh as well. Usul fiqh.
I don't know if I should bring this up now, but it seems to me that everyone with a little bit of ilm becomes a mujtahid.
Yeah,
You
definitely.
memorize the 40 hadiths. You're a mashallah.
No, you've read 40
now.
hadiths.
Yeah, well, let's not even go there. But let's say you've memorized the 40 hadiths. You're now a learned individual in hadith.
Subhanallah.
You've memorized a juz amma, and mashallah, you're a mufassir now. But like we've made Islam so. Islam is simple, no doubt about it. Usulul fiqh is not simple.
Yeah.
And someone actually quoted this, right? And like I do my readings a lot around these type of concepts of how we should be careful because we're students first and foremost. Anything we say here, we're saying as students. There is fault in what we say, and we know that, and we if anything, we challenge others to fix mistakes, right? And we tell them we should improve upon it. We should learn from it. And of course, we do the best to do our research. But we live in a modern era where modern sensibilities are very, very soft, right? People want instant gratification. You want to Google something and get the answer. There's like, you want law to be black and white, right? Law is contextual, right? Legal ruling is contextual. Why would you have a judge then? Right?
Exactly.
A judge in this case would take dalil, right? And then make a decision on top of it. And someone I was reading said something this very beautifully and eloquently. There is a yearning for a legal system that is spelled out in an incontestable manner, but law is naturally complex, and this is why lawyers are usually hired to interpret the law.
Wow.
Right? You don't go and read the law and say it's the equivalent of saying I'm undergoing a massive lawsuit. I'm gonna go and fight it myself.
I'm gonna go just read the
Good
books
luck.
and
Right.
I'm undergoing these and these symptoms. I'm gonna Google it. Now I'm gonna go to the pharmacist, tell him I'm a doctor. I'm gonna prescribe me myself those drugs.
Nah, forget that. I need to do an organ transplant. I'm gonna lay myself down on the table and I'm gonna cut myself open. Right? Like there's so many examples that you can take, but it's the fact of the matter. We live in this post-truth era, modern era, post-truth, right? Where everything is available to us online. We're instantly able to access it. And for that reason, we think that Sheikh Google and Mufti Chat GPT are the answers to our problems.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe, and this is a maybe, right? When you're a student of knowledge, you're able to access knowledge, right? You're able to access and learn it. And I agree, you should use tools to access it. But there's a reason why a student is a student of a teacher, right?
Exactly.
A student is a student of a teacher, so you can learn the intricacies. You can learn the contextual situations. Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, would have the biggest circle of students. And his circles would be circles upon circles, literal circles upon circles of students, where he would never reach a conclusion without properly convening,
Analyzing the entire situation.
analyzing the situation, hearing the opinions of others. And that's how deep it was at that time, right? Islam was growing at a pace where it was going to the Levant, so like Eastern Mediterranean area, right? It was going into Egypt. It was going into all over Africa, right? So we're seeing Islam grow at such a rapid pace, but because Islam was growing so rapidly, it required for the fiqh and the understanding of it to be adaptable in many different situations. Because a microcosm like Makkah al-Mukarramah, Madinatul Munawwara had so many situations.
I think you're jumping the gun. I think even before Imam Abu Hanifa, there were two mazhabs that always existed.
Let's talk about them.
Okay.
The time of the Prophet, or
No,
right
no,
after the time of the Prophet?
There could not have been the
It's
mazhab.
not possible. That's what I was going to say.
Why? Because the Prophet was the mazhab.
Was the mazhab?
Oh,
Right? You can't. There's no way.
Rasulullah
That's not
was
what
the
the right-
answer to everything.
exactly.
Right. So if you begin this kind of learning and in this journey for Rasulul Fiqh, usually where you'll begin from the initial two madhahib.
Mhm.
Okay.
Ahlul Hadith, Ahlul Rai.
All right.
Mhm.
Ahlul Hadith were the students of Hadith, where Hadith and the individuals who followed that Hadith were found abundant. Where
Okay.
was that? Madinatul
Madinatul
Munawwara
Munawwara.
and Makkatul Muharrama. So within those two cities, Hadith was abundant. You found Sahaba, if not Sahabi, you found Tabi'een who learned from hundreds of Sahaba. If not, you found Tabi'een who learned
Yeah.
from thousands of Tabi'een and their
Sahabas.
teachers, etc. Then you go a little bit. This is south. So imagine the map. Saudi Arabia, Makkah, Medina are here. You go a little north. You enter
Northeast,
into a
yeah.
city
Mm.
called Kufa.
Kufa. Yeah.
Here, there's two major ones.
Iraq, by the way, like modern day Iraq.
And this really comes at a time when Hazrat Ali, and maybe we'll discuss, that history and why all
Yeah.
that happened, where Khilafat was moved, the capital was moved basically from Madinatul Munawwara to city of Kufa. Abdullah ibn Masud was there and Hazrat Ali was there.
Yep.
Apart from them, there were maybe a couple other companions.
Mhm.
There were individuals, I'm sure, in the hundreds who traveled there but didn't really live there.
Yep.
Tabi'in you could find. Tabi'in you could find. But authentic sources of hadith were few and far in between because the Sahaba didn't want to leave Medina.
Yeah.
If they did, they went for jihad. And then they came back. For example, Hazrat Bilal. Radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. So the Ahlul Ray, their thing was, okay, listen, we have the Quran. We have the sayings of the hadith.
People of opinion, right?
People, you could say opinion or you could say people of understanding.
Understanding. Okay.
Because what they really had to do is they had the Quran, they had hadith that they had heard from their teachers, but they didn't see a practical example. So what did they do? Combined it with reasoning
Yep.
and deduce something.
And a generation two after is where Imam Abu Hanifa came in this case.
Yeah, a generation.
Literally just one generation.
Imam Abu Hanifa came and he saw all of this, and I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Raising your hands at each takbir during salah.
Mhm.
Oh,
Who
okay.
narrated this hadith?
Rafa Yadin.
Rafa Yadan, we
Yeah.
call it. But who narrated this hadith? Abdullah ibn Masud
Masud, radiyallahu anhu.
and Hazrat Ali.
Mhm.
Imam Abu Hanifa, he notes this hadith. But then he notes, but I never saw Imam Hazrat Ali or Abdullah ibn Masud ever do it. But the hadith is sound.
Hadith is
In
sound.
fact, you'll find probably, I would say, dozens of companions who narrate the same hadith.
Oh.
Same thing with Imam Malik. And I guess we'll get into it. But Imam
Yeah.
Malik, one of his 16 principles, one is the practice of the people of Ahlul Madinah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? And that practice of Ahlul Madinah was they never did it.
Yep.
So he's like, I'll quote this hadith, but if the people of Medina didn't do it, why would
Why
I
am
do it?
Yeah.
So maybe that specific example of this raising the hands, and if you do it, more power to you, mashallah. You follow Shafi'i, you follow Hanbali. We respect you, we love you as a Muslim brother. But there are differences of opinion. I'm not going to hate on you for raising your hands, whereas I expect you not to hate on me for not raising
We're not
my hands.
raising it.
And
Exactly.
that respect is actually not just verbal, it is deep respect, because that you're respecting the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Correct, yeah.
And we also acknowledge that sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And people, I think, forget that, right?
Yeah.
When there is a difference of now interpretation,
Yep.
it does not mean difference of opinion. Because when you get to that level, bias gets in the way, personal opinion gets in the way, and that is forbidden in the eyes of the law of Qur'an and Sunnah, point blank period.
Yeah.
Because how can you go against what prophetic tradition is? If there is authentic hadith that states that Rafa Yadain was done, then it is permissible, right? And so I don't think people, and if we hear this, it is a genuine understanding of you are right and we are also right? And I think that's sort of the theme that we're going to be mixing into eventually when we go and talk about these madahib, is that you'll find that there is understanding in all of them, and that there is a joint unity that exists underlying in all of these as well. Considering the fact that Islam was revealed to us by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And Islam is such a religion that is adaptable in all these situations. So I'm actually very glad you gave the Rafaidain example, because by telling us now that there's two different areas, this is actually now the upbringing of this generation of the founders of methodology, right? Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, right? He is now upon the generation after as Abdullah ibn Masud radiallahu anhu in Kufa is born, right? And he is such an individual that I think narrations say he comes from a merchant family, is a well-off family, a well-off merchant family. And he's very, very bright in the sense of rhetoric, in the sense of thinking, unique understanding.
Analogy.
He is then later in his life encouraged to, not in his young life, to my understanding, into my research, it was in his mid years, like 20s, and that he then approached the science of Islam, usul fiqh, the science of fiqh as well in general, and studying this. And then this is where he sort of went into the depths of it and understanding it and created the methodology of reasoning, right? And the methodology of reasoning is very interesting in the Hanafi madhab. And when I was studying, and I'm still studying, when I started studying fiqh from my teacher, my teacher always said, you know what's so interesting is that there are political and geopolitical reasons why the Hanafi madhab grew so vast, and we'll get into that. But another reason is because it was so based in reasoning and communal understanding. It was so adaptable in non-Arabic speaking communities, right? You'll see it grow to nowadays, Pakistan to Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
Such a wide range of Turkic nations as well. It existed throughout the whole Ottoman Empire. And the reason is because of that adaptability of the methodology. And Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah was, I guess, the senior in this case to the other imams, because he's older. He existed
Came first,
yeah. Right? Some would even say the father of jurisprudence as well in this case, because he would not himself write it down, but his students were very famous. Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Al-Hasan Al-Shaybani were very popular, and we'll get into that because they're also classmates, teachers, students of the other imams as well, right? So there's amazing, like, it's interconnected, all of it. They also follow this methodology of their teacher, Imam Abu Hanifa, and that methodology of practical reasoning, of using qiyas, of getting ijma on opinions. Ijma meaning consensus, I think is the easiest way to define it. And through that, his students would do the same. And his students would be the ones to write it down eventually, his works, and write down conclusive, because Imam Abu Hanifa said, in one sitting, do not write down what I say, right? Because my opinion on this after discussion and thought may eventually reach a deeper conclusion, a more refined conclusion. And that's what we got, right? And that's what we continue to get for hundreds of years, centuries and centuries of preservation. And that's essentially what it is. It's communal preservation of scholarly work.
Yeah.
There is nothing in the world of scholarship, in the world of, if you look into academia, that is so communal in peer review as the work of these madhabs, right?
Well, I mean,
Exactly.
you have 1,200 years of scholarship.
Peer reviewing scholarship.
Yeah. And now understand that each of these, there's statuses of mujtahids that have come. There's mujtahid mutlaq, which is like an absolute mujtahid. He has the ability to move things around within a specific usul, within a specific madhab.
Definitely.
There's mujtahid muqayyid, who is bound by the mujtahid mutlaq, but he is able to issue fatwas. Then there's mujtahid madhab, which he can issue fatwas, but those fatwas are dependent upon the mujtahid above him.
Yep.
So there are even ranks of mujtahid. And for the life of me, what I don't understand, there's a hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, my ummah will never have a consensus on, will never combine on dalala, on a singular thing.
Yeah.
There will always be whatever the majority is, the ummah will gravitate towards it. The four madhahib, the four madhab, all four of them, I would say for the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, 80 to 90% of the ummah is upon one of those madhab. And the 10 to 20% who are not just happen to occur in the last, I would say, 50 to maybe 100 years. Here's what my teacher told me. Okay. He said, I would rather take the mistakes of those four than the corrections of the current shuyukh.
Subhanallah.
I would rather take the
Mistakes,
mistakes of those four than the corrections of the today's
Modern
shuyukh.
day.
Because, I mean, there's teachers of my teachers, they tell me stories. For example, one of them, he learned through Egypt, and his sheikh never drank water from a fountain or from a pipe. You know how we have in sinks?
Yeah, the tap water.
People asked him why. Yeah, tap water. Why? And he always used to drink it from well. And if somebody brought him a glass of water, he would ask, where's the water from? And if he said tap water, he would, doesn't matter if he was fasting, how thirsty, he wouldn't. Why? Somebody asked him. He said, because those pipes are built by the government. I don't trust the government because that might have come from haram money.
Oh, subhanallah.
Subhanallah.
Where do you
That's a
find this
strong
level
one,
of taqwa?
Taqwa.
You don't.
Yeah.
No.
So
Can't.
these I mean, do you think Imam Abu Hanifa ever tasted haram?
Yeah, no, never. Even if you talk about, this is something very strong you brought about, but even if you talk about the closeness of the time they were in to the time of Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam,
Yes, listen.
that is even in fact a very big, a dalil for them to be the best one to be followed.
Right.
Like Imam Azam Abu Hanifa is one of those imams that who has like I think 17 direct narrations from the Sahaba, or 15 or 17.
Yep.
And he is that guy who has been completing the whole Quran daily when he was not so busy.
Yep.
But when he got busy in his works and his teachings and his school got bigger, he was, I think, completing the Quran after 3 days or after every second day. So if you compare the modern day ulamas and shuyukh, and if a random person just comes up and says, oh, I think Imam Azam Abu Hanifa is wrong here, I would definitely look again into that.
Well, even anyone who says that ulama or that alim or that shuyukh or that mujtahid is wrong, there has to be an opinion based on it.
Exactly. You have to have.
That opinion must be rooted in Quran and Hadith.
Not a Twitter post.
Yeah. And here's a problem with that. People, especially in the Western civilization, there's a difference in Islam of the way you obtain Islam from Eastern civilizations and
the
Western
Western ones,
civilizations.
Yeah.
And the reason is language.
Yep.
English is a very basic language.
True.
But even English, here's the problem with English. I came from Makkah. What does that mean? That my journey started
From Makkah.
I drank from that glass. What is that? What does the from mean in there? That I drank some water from that glass. The from all of a sudden changes.
Changed his meaning.
Here's a hadith now, and I want your opinions on this. Ready? The hadith is very famous hadith. English is, I won't say the Arabic. The English is that those who fast 6 days after fasting all 30 days min Shawwal, in Shawwal, have fasted the whole year.
Okay.
Here's the question. Is it the first 6 days right after Ramadan of Shawwal, or any 6 days in Shawwal?
And is it 6 days without a break or with a break?
Well, I don't want to get into that. That's another whole. But just very basic. What does the word min Shawwal mean? Here?
Means.
What would you take it as?
In Shawwal. So anytime in Shawwal.
What would you take it as?
Yeah, anytime in Shawwal, of course.
Okay. So Imam Malik didn't agree to that.
Mm-hmm.
He said this min grammatically is a min that is without a break.
And
So
the only
it
reason
must
I gave
be-
an opinion is because you asked.
yeah, we're not.
We're not.
I'm
Obviously.
the same. Like I'm just asking these questions just for cause of conversation here.
Next thing you know, someone's gonna comment. He thinks he's a
No,
Muslim.
no. We were students of Deen, if that. Like
Exactly.
I honestly don't even consider myself a student
100%.
because to be a student, you need a certain level of akhlaq, certain level of taqwa. I don't think I have that.
Mhm.
But anyways, so that min, Imam Malik and Imam Shafi'i differed.
Mhm.
Min is a 2-letter word. Mim, noon. If you can differ on an opinion on a
On
2-letter
min.
word, on a preposition, in Arabic,
Yeah.
in English it's called, then what about the Qur'an? You know, there's so many
So many
opinions that
things.
happen. And let's get into the 4 madhabs now. Here, just as a basic rundown. The 4 big madhab are what? Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali. Now, why do I put Maliki before Shafi'i? Simple. Imam Abu Hanifa taught Malik,
Yeah.
who taught Shafi'i, who taught Hanbali.
Mhm.
Okay? Very simple. That's why Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali. All 4 of these madhahib, they're rooted on 2 things. Quran and Hadith. Or Sunnah.
This.
Imam Abu Hanifa gave more precedence to the Quran than to the Sunnah.
Yeah, like Qur'an and Sunnah. Quran comes like before.
For him.
For him.
For Imam Abu. So if there's a Quran and Hadith and there's maybe something. Now, Quran and Hadith never contradict each other. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind. Okay. There may be apparent. I'm not going to get into these examples. There might be apparent contradictions. We're not individuals. I'm not a mujtahid. I'm not a mufassir. I'm not any of that. I don't think
Yeah.
either of you guys.
No.
I doubt some of our listeners are either. So I don't want to get into those really nitty gritty details. But if the Quran and Sunnah appear to be contradictory, Imam Abu Hanifa takes the Quran above any hadith.
Any hadith, okay.
Then comes Imam Malik. Imam Malik takes Quran, he takes Sunnah. But he adds another layer. He says, I have over 600 teachers that are tabi'in. I never stepped foot outside of Masjid al-Medina.
Medina.
I have only 1 teacher who is not a tabi'in. All of my other narrations are from tabi'in, from Sahaba to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So if I have a hadith akbar or hadith ahad, you know what that is?
Yeah, khabar wahid, you can
Khabar
say.
wahid, yeah, just one narration. But if the companions in Medina didn't follow it, I reject the hadith.
Oh.
Not in a disrespectful kind of
No.
way, but just in terms of making his usul.
Making us so.
Imam Shafi'i comes, nope.
Nope. Yep.
For me, hadith is above any companion, so to
Exactly.
speak. Again, I'm oversimplifying it. I don't want to be rude, but it's just a simple. It's out of adab that it's not. He didn't reject it. The hadith, what the companions did, it's called urf or custom. What he said is hadith takes precedence.
Mhm.
Okay, and then he ranked the hadith. Then came Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, who segregated in such a way. He says, I'm not even going to make a comparison amongst the hadith.
Yeah.
If a hadith exists, I'm taking it and I'm basing my usul on that, because who am I to judge on a
That's
hadith?
still out of piety and honor.
Basically.
Humility. Yeah.
So
Humbleness.
it's like all 4 of them were really rooted in taqwa. All 4 of them were rooted in Quran and hadith. Which madhab do I follow?
Mhm.
So let's kind of go into that. But before that, maybe you want to talk a little bit about Imam Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, Hanbali, just briefly.
Yeah, no, they all have geological upbringings
Yep.
as well. So, Imam Malik spent, like you said, his whole time in Medina Munawwara, meaning that he had that influence from the practices of people of Medina Munawwara.
Yep.
Right. There is, if you speak to anyone, it is like a culture of sorts.
Yeah.
Right. And
That's how I grew up.
yeah, it's how you grew up. That culture is the Medina culture. It is how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam they interpret it and that's how they practice. So then he would interpret it and give situational analysis from it. And just like you said in that case as well, Imam Shafi'i in that case had a very
Do you know
let's
where
say
Imam Shafi'i was from?
he was originally from Gaza.
Gaza, Palestine.
Oh, that's
And then he,
interesting.
at a young age, went to Makkah al-Mukarramah, and he did move around quite a bit.
He went to
actually.
Medina where he learned from Imam Malik.
Imam Malik, correct. And he memorized the Quran at the age of 7. SubhanAllah.
MashaAllah.
And learned and memorized many books at that point,
Mhm.
and had 2 people in his community the authority to give rulings at the age of 15. Now, that I don't think anyone right now ever will reach. These are people of the Tabi'in. Right?
Yeah,
Like you can't,
forever.
we can't compare examples to this day at all.
100%.
And so I'm just trying to give you a geological perspective, right? That the hadith's importance now for Imam Shafi'i in this case is because he is now surrounded with the books of hadith, the people of narration as well. So he is very rigid on the policy of it. And Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal was born and raised in Baghdad Sharif in this case, right? So not in that same environment, but he learned from the students of Imam Abu Hanifa and from Imam Shafi'i as well. And he learned Islamic law actually from Imam Shafi'i in this case. But they all actually in their later years share many unique qualities and actually many unified qualities as well,
Exactly.
and unified stories. Every one of these 4 great imams also went through severe forms of tribulation and trials. Each one of them was also tested by the governments of time,
Yeah.
were imprisoned. 3 of them were also like tortured
Yeah.
as well in their
Do you know
own
why?
cases.
Just as a summary.
It was because of their taqwa, right? Like and their principle. And let me actually give an example just to give a bit more context, because I wanted to make sure I noted down these stories for the audience, because it gives you an idea of how they stood their ground
Exactly.
on their different. Imam Abu Hanifa actually in his own case was invited by the government to become the Chief Justice. Al-Mansur was at that time. Yep. And I believe that's the Abbasids. And Al-Mansur was inviting him to become the Chief Justice. And politically, if you know, even nowadays we have this, that in a political scenario, when a leader of a nation is bringing upon a Chief Justice, obviously you want that Chief Justice to be on your side of the table.
Yeah.
Right? There's those underlying
the dynamics there,
opinions
yeah.
that you come, but there are XYZ conditions attached to it. Imam Abu Hanifa was a man of taqwa, was a man of humility, a man of knowledge, right? He would never accept. But his response was actually very interesting in the case that he said, I'm not qualified for this.
Yeah.
I'm not qualified
It's
for this
crazy.
role. And for him to say
No,
that
sir.
is subhanAllah, like
Yeah.
that's Al-Mansur says you're a liar. And he replied,
I called him a liar for saying that I'm not qualified.
qualified. I said, if you are calling me a liar, how can I be your Chief Justice?
That's
Right?
right.
And this is where he was then imprisoned for this. And students would still come to the prison and learn from Imam Abu Hanifa.
Yeah.
But he was very much tortured in those scenarios. He was very much put through many tribulation. And the same goes for all the other Khalifas as well.
Yeah.
The way that is for all the other Imams as well in their own, in their own scenarios. There's the story of Imam Shafi'i. Harun al-Rashid was...
Maybe, Talha, do you know anything about Imam Shafi'i you want to add on?
No, not for the Imam Shafi'i. I'll
Okay.
mention for the next
Yeah.
one.
So actually, before I get to Shafi'i, let's talk about Maliki real
Sure.
quick. And
Yeah.
he opposed basically the Abbasid Caliphate at that time through his own fatwa, and he wouldn't. His fatwa was also a jab at the government, right? That in a very layman's terms, divorce under duress is nothing. Which, if you translate the many different levels of meaning of it, it can mean many different things, right? But separating yourself under duress, meaning under difficulty, under going through trial, under, if you get what I mean, it means nothing. And the Caliphate said, retract this. retract what you have said. But he stood his ground. This is what it is. Why should I go against you? Why should I, go with what you are saying? He didn't. And for this, Imam Malik was then whipped publicly and shamed publicly for this. And the reason I'm saying this is because there's stories from Imam Shafi'i, Imam Hanbali as well. And I'm actually very shy sharing this actually, because these are the biggest imams of our history, right?
Great names.
After the beloved companions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's because look at what a geopolitical or political scenario has brought to people of knowledge, right? People who stood their ground in what it is on principle, their truth, the truth that they brought forward. They wouldn't shift and sway based on it.
Unlike the shuyukh of today. I'm not afraid to say it. I mean, it's a fact. I know many people who are willing to change their fatwas or give less than ideal fatwas in scenarios where they're getting or making a quick buck.
Wow.
And we see it. And that quick buck can be simply as a controversial YouTube video.
Exactly, just to gain some more audience. And also, like, I remember a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard that. I think the meaning of that was for the one of the identifications for truth is that it will be targeted and it would be contradicted baselessly. Like for haqq being haqq, there has to be some kind of baseless, naive contradiction and conflict. If everybody likes you and you are good to everyone, there's something wrong.
Not meaning, but a mafhum of the hadith.
the mafhum of this hadith.
Yeah, there's something fishy going around. And actually, let me also share Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal as well. He, at his time, was opposing as well during the reign of the Abbasid Caliphate.
All of them at some point opposed the royalty or the khilafat.
And
in some degrees.
It wasn't, and it wasn't for just opposing. It was for standing up for what is right. And I think everyone should know this, right? You read your history, find your sources, it is there. They stood up for what is right because there are people of knowledge. There are people who, if they weren't upon the right path, why would people listen to them?
Exactly.
Why would their sources even be truth to today? Actually, you've studied Usul Hadith, right? You wouldn't even listen to the hadith that they've then transmitted upon forward because then they become people that may have na'udhu billah, other intentions, but that wasn't the case. So he opposed the Caliph Al-Ma'mun at that time. And the controversy was, and I think it was the Mu'tazila at that time, they would say that the Quran, na'udhu billah, is a created entity, right? And this, in our Sunni belief, is contradictory, right? We do not believe in this. It is eternal. It is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? It's very simply put. He was brought to the court of this Khalifa and he said, bring me proof from the Qur'an or Sunnah and I will agree, otherwise I will not speak for myself. Said this to his face, right? They tortured Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal and left scars on his body. And then he said, how can I agree to say what I know is false just to save myself from a few lashes? What will I say to Allah on the day of judgment?
Subhanallah.
Subhanallah. This was taqwa. And once that Khalifa passed away, the next Khalifa came in with the same agenda, continuing it forward. And he said he publicly interrogated Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal and continued to whip him in front of a crowd. And every time he would pass out, they would revive him, bring him back, and torture him again. And they kept that firmness. Like, why should I change the truth of the law for your opinion?
Exactly.
For your baseless opinion? And I will second what you said, unlike the people of today, right? We are laymen, for lack of better terms. Whatever we've studied to have this conversation is layman's understanding. I believe everyone should have the understanding of what madhahibs are, what it means to interpret something, because this is your truth that you live every single day. You have to explain it to your children one day, right? Your children are going to ask you, so what does it mean to be Hanafi? It's not like it's used as your identity, but in a way it is your way of living, right? Because you need to have a loyalty to the way you live. And the reason for that being, and I think we should actually talk about this, is why should you now be loyal to one way, right? One madhab.
I think before we get into that, why should you follow a madhab?
That's
why is it important?
Why is it important to even be upon a path of a school of thought, a way of thinking? And I think we've sort of answered it yet at this moment. And that
I think it's still unclear.
Unclear? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, a generic response, and I'll give you this and let's build upon it, is first of all, we do not have that understanding. And we do not have the ability to go into the depths of that understanding to come out with what a judicial decision is. Ijtihad. For that reason, ijtihad has been done on various scenarios that we live daily. For example, we live in a Western society. We deal with interests, for example. We deal with living in a society that we have to pay taxes to a non-Islamic government. So there are various rulings on these. Am I to make my own opinion, or am I to follow the opinion of a madhab that has the ijma' and the conclusive evidence and understanding from various scholars through a legacy of 1200 years?
Yeah.
Right. So that's sort of where I stand on it.
Yeah.
And for anyone that says I follow the Qur'an and Sunnah, do these madahibs not follow the Qur'an and Sunnah?
Yeah.
is actually what I would answer back.
That's very surprising.
I know you don't like when I say, why would you answer a question with a question? But I love doing it because it just puts into perspective what you just did. You ask me and you say, but I follow the Qur'an and Sunnah. Am I not following the Qur'an and Sunnah by following a madhab?
I think. Oh, why don't you, Talha?
Yeah, well, there's a very good point people bring about, like, who say, like, I don't have to follow any of the madhabs or any of the imams. Rather, I just go straight to Quran and Sunnah, and just interpret myself. And for that, the Quran speaks itself. So in the Quran it says, like, and indeed we have made the Quran easy for direction and guidance. So basically, Quran says that Quran is easy for nasiha. It's easier for advice. But when you go into the conflicts and deeper knowledge and to deduce laws out of it, like the fiqh itself, deduce maybe, for example, inheritance laws, international laws, for that you do need to go to the experts.
Yeah,
So-
you were told to pray, but were you told how to pray in situations, right?
Definitely.
Like the
The
hukam.
ayah was وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. Just wanted to make that correction.
Subhanallah. And so in that case, like, we are taught the point in the Quran is to pray. From the hadith and the prophetic tradition, we learn how to pray, right?
Yeah.
In the tradition, how to pray, there are different interpretations based on context, based on society in Madinah Munawwara, based on authentic hadith.
Listen, here's my take on it. Okay, very simple. This whole system is a system based on humility and over 1,200 years of scholarship
Definitely.
and mujtahidun.
Yeah.
And anyone who stands up and says, nope, I know better, is a mutakabbir, which is a disease of the heart, and we do not take anything from a mutakabbir.
Exactly.
That's as simple as it gets. Do you not think that Imam Abu Hanifa prayed with Tabi'een, who prayed with the likes of Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman, Ali, Talha, Zubayd, Abu Ubaidullah bin Jarrah, Amr ibn As, and so on, who prayed with Rasulullah, do you not think they knew where to put their hands during prayer?
Exactly.
Do you not think they know which way the feet should point and how wide the feet should be?
Should be.
Nowadays, you take this hadith without a context or a linguistic understanding of the words contained in that hadith, and you say that they were like pegs, and so you try to be as wide as possible, that probably 5 humans could walk underneath you and you'd still be fine, right? But do you think that Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, if they didn't make a point of that and if they didn't pray like that, that they wouldn't notice? If you follow an Imam, think about this logically. Like, for example, Shaykh al-Islam comes. You know what I've noticed about Shaykh al-Islam? He does something with his hands. During Sami Allah, during Qiyam, when he stands up after Ruku, Sami Allah, where does he place his hands?
Right by his thighs, behind it.
Here, yeah.
Usually, so his hands are usually open towards the back, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My hands used to be like this. Most of the individuals who have some sort of aqidah for him, they've begun to do the same thing.
Taqleed.
Why? Because you respect him, you see every action that he does. So do you think Imam Abu Hanifa, when he prayed with the students of Imam Ibn Masud, Hazrat Ali, didn't know where to place the hands?
SubhanAllah. And that's actually, then they're going to say, oh, but Dr. Abdullah, I read Quduri Sharif and I read Muraqi Sadat. There's no hadith in there.
Fair enough, but I can give you Bukhari.
And that's just to say that just because it is enveloped on layers and layers from the hadith to reach the consensus that it's for you to read and learn.
Malikis, okay, spent 600 teachers who prayed in Masjid al-Nabwi in front of the grave of the Prophet. Okay, learned from, these were the individuals who learned from the, there's no doubt about it.
There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
How did they pray? Imam Malik's, they have two opinions. One opinion is their hands would be to their sides.
Okay.
And which hadith did they take? Well, during the winter, their hands would clasp their thighs because of the cold. But there's also another opinion, again, same opinion, where they also clasp their hands over here. Then Imam Malik and the Malikis, how do they end their salah? Do you know? How do we, we're Hanafis.
So we do.
Hanafi.
Assalamu alaikum wa
Hanafi.
rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa
Rahmatullah.
Malik's, Imam Malikis, they do this. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
And they finish.
Oh, so no complete turn.
Nobody in Medina used to do it.
Yeah.
If no one in Medina did it, do you think Abu Bakr did it? Do you think
No.
Umar did it? You think Usman did it? But Imam Abu Hanifa, who was in Kufa, he learned from Ibn Masud and he saw from Hazrat Ali, but they did it.
They did it.
Which ones are you going to take? Which ones are you not going to take? So then there's some shuyukh who come up and he say, I'll take this hadith, I'll take this hadith, I'll take this hadith. Here, let me present it to you in a way, because no one has the capacity to read, analyze, interpret hundreds of thousands of ahadith.
Yeah.
So what do they do? Oh, I'll read this shaykh's hadith. You aren't reading the prophetic tradition. You're reading the tradition that is biased from that scholar that you're reading who selected the specific ahadith for you.
For you. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually that's interesting because when I learned from my teacher, he gave examples of different madhahib. And for example, the Maliki madhab is spread across Morocco now as well, right?
Yes,
And
very much so.
there
Andalusia in Morocco.
Andalusia, Morocco, seafood is very popular in those
Oh,
regions, right? So are snails, for example. And so they would make judicial decisions based upon also the culture, the geographical location, the society, and the permittance would be given for certain types of food based on what they had.
Yeah.
Right? And that's something I found very interesting because that's for every society. The Hanafi madhab was part of many growing empires and nations. So it grew very vastly and quickly. So, sorry, go ahead.
Here's an example of the Hanafi fiqh, okay? I just like giving these examples because it helps people practically understand.
Yeah.
Imam Abu Hanifa, very famous, very controversial. If the Imam is reading Surah Fatiha in Fard Salah,
You do not say anything.
you do not, whether it's out loud he's reading or, in the
Quietly.
heart.
We don't know. Say.
Uproar in Kufa. What do you mean? Everyone should be reading. Everyone should be reading. They go up. They're like, okay, what's your opinion? What's your opinion? What's your opinion? Everyone starts speaking at Imam Abu Hanifa. They basically go into a school and they begin to, Imam Abu Hanifa, he says, you know what? You're speaking. How am I supposed to understand what everyone is speaking about? Select one representative. He's like, that's exactly what I'm saying.
So one of you speak, all of you stop speaking.
Because that one person collectively embodies the thought of the
And
ummah
that is what
behind
an-
him.
behind
That's what
him,
an
yeah.
imam is.
That's analogy. That's
Analogy.
reasoning. See, that's where Imam Abu Hanifa took his fiqh from. So the maqsad of saying all of these and the discussion for today is differences of opinion exist.
Mhm.
My message and what I've learned from this is not my message, sorry, from my ustad. I'm not someone to give a message to anyone. But what I've learned from my ustad, do not be so prideful and boastful that you think you are the sole representative of Rasulullah,
Yeah.
the sole understander of the Quran. Trust those individuals who have learned in usul, in fiqh, in mantiq, in language, in rhetoric, in grammar, in ilm, in hadith, in usul al-hadith, and all of these different sciences. Trust them more than you trust yourself. Similarly to how you trust a doctor more than
Or
you
your
trust
medical
yourself,
treatment.
or you trust a pharmacist more than you trust yourself, or you trust a carpenter more than you trust yourself. Again, as we've given practically many examples today.
And I like to give this example, like you said, the level and maqam of the ulama is something that we don't understand till this day. During the time of the Rasulullah, the companions advised a wounded man who was not in a state of purity to do ghusl, to get out of a state of purity. And you understand why he would need to do it, because he did something that would require him to ghusl. And the man had asked if he could just do tayammum, dry ablution, if it was permissible, but they insisted, no, you have to do ghusl in this case. The man did ghusl and he obeyed their command, but because of that, subsequently, he passed away. He died. It probably due to exposure, the water, the infection, whatever it may be. Rasulullah ﷺ was very, very
angry,
unhappy and angry with them in this case. And that you have basically killed this man. Rasulullah was very, very unhappy, very angry with them, that you have basically killed this man, and rebuked them and said, how could you have done this? And some people, this is the rahmah of Rasulullah. He's telling you, you have gone beyond what is the teaching of Islam.
Upon Rasulullah, one final thing that I just remembered, it's really important.
And wait, let me finish this.
Go ahead.
And many scholars, they talk about the instant that because they just give a fatwa on the spot without even talking about it. And Rasulullah has often gave corrective advice that could they not ask when they did not know? The cure for ignorance is asking.
MashaAllah.
That's all you have to do.
It's a very big thing.
The
Not
cure-
asking every Tom, Dick, and Harry.
No. Go to your imam. Go to your scholars. Go to the people of knowledge and ask them. And I know you're going to end up on a story, and I really want to share the story of Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, but let's...
It's a hadith.
Okay.
What's the one mazhab that the Prophet not recommended, but he glorified, and he said...
Praised.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
What's that one mazhab? Do you know the hadith? But how? Do you know the hadith?
The man who conquered Constantinople.
Who was?
Mehmed
II.
Fatih.
Mehmed II, Muhammad al-Fatih. He goes and the hadith says, Amirun Amiri wa ni'mal Amir. So praise be to the Amir who is the praise of all Amirs, and praise be to the army of all of the armies. I praise them, the ones who conquered Constantinople. By ijma of the ulama, he was a Hanafi, he was a Maturidi, and he was a Naqshbandi. And I'll end there.
Subhanallah. And I think that is a perfect way to sum up that in your lives, find structure, find foundation in the madahib, find way of life through these people of humility, these people who were from the noble generations, who learned from the people of noble generations, who directly learn from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Do not complicate Islam for yourself. They have made Islam in a way that Islam is understood for all of us and understandable for all of us, so that we can implicate and action on it in our daily lives. A beautiful story just to end off, so that you can end off on a happy note. The beautifulness of istighfar. Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal once, and imagine the greatest of imams, was just traveling and he sought shelter in a mosque and he was denied by the janitor. He went outside and he was sleeping on the streets because he had nowhere to go. A bread maker, or as you would say, a bread seller at that time, actually came by Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal and he said, "You come with me, let me host you. What are you doing sleeping on these streets?" And he obviously did not know who this man was. So he invited him. And Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal noticed this man, whatever he did day to day, he would just do istighfar all the time, repeatedly. Istighfar, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. He would repeatedly do it, whatever he did. And then Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal, when he asked him, "What has your constant seeking of forgiveness brought you?" The man replied, "Every dua I have made has been answered except one." Imam Ahmed asks, "What is it that has not been asked?" He says, "To meet Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal has been my one dua that has not been answered." Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal replied by saying, "Allah Almighty has dragged me to your doorstep to answer your dua. This shows the power of sincerity and istighfar, and shows you the sincerity of these beautiful figures that we can learn from, the founders of the madahib, the ways of methodology, the ways of Islam." Anything to share?
Yeah, I do want to put some light on the concept you were talking on, the authority of Islam and basically the salaf we had, like
Yeah.
to follow and to not comprehend Quran and Sunnah by ourselves, but to follow the
Mhm.
persons of authority.
Yep.
So I wanted to bring a note here that let's get back to Hazrat Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, for example.
Mm.
So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, I mean, like even amongst the Sahaba, everyone did not have the same level of understanding for the Quran itself. Everyone did not have the same understanding for the Sunnah itself. Some were like more towards the jihad. Some were like more towards donating
Zakah.
in the wealth, and
Yeah,
different.
they're on the pathways. Yeah.
Yeah. So for Hazrat Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to pray that, oh Allah, bless Abdullah bin Abbas more understanding in deen. Increase his understanding and fiqh comprehension of his for the deen.
Definitely.
So obviously, and that is the same Abdullah bin Abbas who used to say, even if we had to find the leash of our camel, we would find that in the Quran. So that was the level of his understanding for the Quran.
Yeah.
So just taking the example of Sahaba and bringing that concept down to our four Imams and Tabi'een and Taba Tabi'een, compare that with the present Shuyukh al Ulama, obviously there's no comparison. The level of understanding they had at their time would obviously be unmatched and not even parallel to what our Shuyukh have today.
Definitely.
So I think Quran also puts some light on this by saying that Ati Allah wa Rasul wa ulul amr, like obey Allah, obey Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the men of truth among you.
Definitely.
So I don't know what categorical and clear statement we still need to be very open and very satisfied and comfortable in following any of the madhab. Obviously, the four of them are haq and they are on the straight path.
And these people, the founders, we're not explicitly following. We're following the way that they paved.
Yeah,
we're following the way that they paved through hundreds of years of scholarship.
Follow anyone you want. I mean, if you don't want to follow any, don't follow any. Just be respectful to everyone and follow the core principles of Islam. I think that's what we're trying to get at here.
Definitely. May Allah Almighty guide us to these, the righteous path, and allow us to be people of understanding of these paths and learn from this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our discussion and accept whatever it is, whether we made a mistake or not, and fix our mistakes as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, and catch you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.